Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in today. My name is Devin. I work with Bluehost and I'm joined today by Sandy Edwards. Sandy, can you tell us a little bit about your background and who you are?
Absolutely. So I am an agency owner. I own Data Driven Labs, and I also am a homeschool mom. So lots to talk about today.
Lots to talk about. And our topic of conversation is specifically talking about educating kids, but we wanted to talk about what we can do to teach parents to build websites with their kids. I've worked with Sandy a bunch of times. She has ran and operated and come up with a curriculum for kids camps all across the country, and I think globally. Have there been a couple overseas as well? Very cool. But she has helped come up with a curriculum for kids camp, and for those that are not familiar, that is essentially when parents often go to a gathering called WordCamp where people can learn more about WordPress, and they'll bring their kids and drop their kids off. And Sandy, and usually an assistant or two, will help the group of kids build a website from the ground up. Now, with everything going on right now, we wanted to take a minute because we know that their kids are at home. There might be a parent or two out there that are looking for something productive for their kids to do while they're home. So, Sandy, can you tell us a little bit about how long you've been helping kids with websites?
Absolutely. So I have been working with kids and building websites for about 5 years now. It goes back to 2015. So it started out with me actually helping the kids build the websites. And now at this juncture, there are volunteers all over the globe that are doing these programs in their own small towns and areas and countries. And I just make sure that they have the resources that they need and the knowledge that they need. So I'm empowering them to take it to their region.
I love that, and it's such a cool project. It's I've got a couple nephews, and they love their screen time. If they can get in front of a screen, they love it. And I think channeling some of that energy to create something positive is a really, really cool thing. So, can you tell us a little bit about why you got involved with this, how you got started, maybe?
Absolutely. So, like I mentioned, I'm a homeschool mom. I've been homeschooling for 5 years. Um, it's really hard as a parent to gauge when and how to utilize screen time versus just putting an iPad in your kid's hand and letting them, rule the roost, right? It's about figuring out ways to be creative and pointed, and even allowing them to open doors to create a path of creativity instead of just, hey, I'm playing a game. There's a lot of opportunities for apps and programs to use gameplay to foster an education environment. And I feel like right now we're in a place where everything's kind of topsy turvy, and finding ways to kind of hone that in and make sure that kids feel like they have a nice, safe space that they don't necessarily realize they're being educated, but that they're able to have those opportunities to be creative and do some educational things is really awesome.
Yeah, I think that's great. I remember when I was a little bit younger, a lot younger, my mom got me a computer game that was like a learn to type game. And as you would type out the letters to correctly spell the word that the computer told you, there was like some little guy that was climbing up the tree or something. And if you didn't type the right letter, then he wouldn't climb. So, gameplay as an education tool, I think is awesome. I think it's great. And I see the Legos behind you. I feel like you're a kid at heart. We've known each other for a while, so I think that's great. So for someone that might be watching this at home that is thinking, okay, this is great for kids, you know, ambiguously, but is it good for my kid? What would you say to that parent if they think that their kid might be too young? What's a good age for someone to start looking into this?
Well, I put together a resource for parents to find different things for their kids at their age range. And I think you guys posted it on the site, on the blog. So we'll definitely make sure that that link gets out. But basically, if your child is old enough to read or type, then they're old enough to participate by themselves. If they're not quite there yet, there are certainly opportunities to teach them coding logic. One of the tools that I found absolutely amazing, they go as young as 4 as a recommended age, and it's called the Osmo, and it connects to an iPad, and it allows a child to use building blocks to control the character on the screen. So they're actually using these physical items to actually control what's going on their computer screen, and so they're able to learn the basic of coding logic of functions and loops. So they're able to actually start to put all of that logic together at a very early age so that they can transition that into coding by the time they're 7, 8 years old. So I know that my child, by the time he was 12, he was already mastering certain JavaScript libraries. And that's just because we started him so young with some of these other opportunities.
So as what I'm hearing is I'm about 29 years too late. Is that's basically what
It's
I'm hearing?
n- it's never too late,
It's
Devin.
never too
It's
late.
never too
It
late.
might be too late for me. Who knows? Who knows? Okay, so 4 years old, but maybe the age is not as critical as the ability, reading and writing. And I think that's awesome. And that makes sense. It's kind of like learning to ski, right? It's like you might not just throw your 5-year-old on the ski lift and send them up the mountain, but with guidance and obviously careful supervision, you can take them in lessons, and there's different tools that you can use to help them be prepared. So when they do get a little bit older, they're a lot more comfortable doing that.
And that's
One of
what
the
bunny slopes are for, right?
That's right, bunny slopes. Exactly. So basically, we're creating an environment for bunny slopes. The building a website on the bunny slopes. I like that. Um, so what about one issue that I've noticed with kids, specifically my nephew that I referenced? He only really cares about Beyblades and Pokemon. And whenever I see him, I love the kid to death. Whenever I see him, those are the two things he wants to play: Beyblades and Pokemon. So uh, if a website is neither Beyblades nor Pokemon, what tips would you give to parents out there that might have a child in a similar situation where it just seems like maybe they're not that interested in building a website? How can we help the kids get excited about building something?
Let them make it about Beyblades and Pokemon. There's nothing that says that the website they're making has to be about them learning math at school or them learning English. It can be about whatever they love. One of the things that my son blogs about is photography because he absolutely loves being behind the camera. And so for him, it's about having a place to put those photos and talk about the trip that we took to get those photos. But I have seen all sorts of really fun topics. But if your nephew specifically is into Beyblades and Pokemon, there's no reason that he can't talk about his favorite Pokemon and why he prefers water types to other Pokemon. The possibilities really are endless, and it's about finding something that your child enjoys that they want to write about. Because what people tend to forget is that the brain is just a muscle. So just like the more you ski, the better at it you're going to get, the more you write, the better at it you're going to get. And more studies are showing that if you actually exercise writing more, it increases your reading scores, your writing scores, and believe it or not, your math scores. And some of that is just a matter of doing the thing more. It doesn't matter what content you're writing about.
Yeah, I like that. And I like what you're saying about essentially using the website as a creative outlet, right? I think that my brother would much prefer than building a website to using crayon on the walls, which is sometimes their current creative outlet. Um, but 4 years old, building about Beyblades and Pokemon, websites are hard, right? Like I know adults that have a hard time building them. Isn't it too hard for a kid to figure out?
So here's the thing. The biggest thing to remember is there's something for everybody. There's a ton of free or inexpensive platforms that don't take a lot of technical prowess. So you can use something like WordPress, and you can add a theme and change some colors and not do anything highly technical and make it all about the words on the page that you don't actually need to know how to code to do. And some of the new changes with Gutenberg coming out, the kids are picking up on it so quickly. We had last year in Miami, we had over 100 students between the age of 5 and 10. And every single one of them walked away with a perfectly built website that they were able to put their content on. And really, a lot of them pick it up faster than some of the adults. So I wouldn't sell the kids too short on that side of things.
I'll agree with you there. And I think that is an important thing to remember is that the kids can go at their own pace, and when we think website, doesn't have to be the next Google, doesn't have to be the next Amazon. It can literally just be a black and white, simple text blog where they can just use that as that creative outlet to put their thoughts and feelings about Beyblades and Pokemon, or add and then as they start to progress, they can add a picture to it or a heading to their blog or an about me page. That's one thing that I think is really cool about using website creation as an education tool is that you can keep growing it, right? And you can hold on to it and you can scrap it and start a new one and you can add more to it and make it a more complex website as you get more comfortable doing that.
Absolutely.
So going along with that, if they are building as they start to build a website, do you think they should start on the computer or do you think it's better that they start sketching things out? What's the best way to go about this?
I think it really depends on the child. I know at kids camps, one of the things that we really focus on is storyboarding. And so we do a quick activity where we use a big post-it easel size pad and stick the post-it to the wall. And that's really just because of space and the allowances that we have at the venues. But the idea is for your favorite color and your favorite food and your favorite animal and your favorite things. Like that would be the perfect opportunity for your nephew to put that he loves Pokemon and Beyblades and all of those things. And then we take all of that and have them morph that into their website. So if their favorite color is purple, then we want to make sure that they put some sort of purple header or a purple image or something like that to bring their personality out. And so we use all of those, my favorite things list to kind of put that together. Does it have to be done that way? Absolutely not. Every kid's going to be different. The biggest thing is your kid. So if your kid needs to see something to make it happen, then allow them that fortitude and that latitude to make that happen. If they don't and they can just wing it, let them wing it. There's no defined structure that you have to maintain. It's all about being creative.
I like that. And I think with some kids, it might almost be beneficial to use the storyboarding, the list, the things that you're writing out, not on the computer, almost as homework, right? I know that some kids react really well if it's like, hey, if you finish your homework, then you can have reward by going on the computer for 15 minutes. So, giving them activities, hey, you got to write out this list, you got to come up with a storyboard, you got to think of your first 3 blog posts, what you want those to be about. That's something they can do just sitting with a piece of paper and a pen. And then once they do that, they can be rewarded, go on the computer and actually bring those to life. So let's say that I'm a parent, I'm out there, I'm seeing this all sounds great, but I don't know where to start. What resources can parents use with their kids?
Absolutely. So we put together an amazing resource list of all sorts of different programs. We have everything from websites that have actual classes on them, all the way to just apps you can put on to iOS, Android type devices. One of the things that I absolutely love is a program Google put together. It's called CS First. I actually have the kit because that's who I am. But they mail you an actual kit. And so
Wow.
what's really cool about this, I mean, it's not a big box, it's not huge, but in here, it's built for a group. So if you have multiple kids, you only need to order one kit. Um, I believe it comes with your choice of sets of 10 of the items. So if there were other kids in the neighborhood and you wanted to do Zoom calls and like deliver the actual items to them in their mailbox, since we all need to stay socially distant for the time being, there are ways that you can still interact and create like they're called clubs. So you can still create your club, but it's really cool because for adults, it provides an amazing book that walks you through everything, and it starts with storytelling. So it doesn't even start with anything highly technical. And so when you're working through everything, this is what the kids get. It actually goes through and has like a club pass. And then as they go through, they're able to like write their little notes and see what they're doing. And so it allows you to go through the process of learning how to set up a story and how to move through that instead of just kind of throwing spaghetti at the wall and hoping something sticks. Which, don't get me wrong, is an amazing way to test spaghetti. But it's one of those things where if you really have no clue where to start, like none whatsoever, Google has done a lot for you to put all of that together. And all they really ask of you is your name and your address to get you the stuff. And that link is listed under classes on that resource guide that we put together. Aside from that, I actually spoke at WordCamp US a couple of years ago, and I walked everyone through exactly how we run a kids camp. So you are more than welcome. That video is on that resource guide as well, to watch that video. You can see kind of why I do what I do. And you can also go through the step-by-step and see all the different steps that I go through at a kids camp, and kind of how I teach other trainers to do the same.
That's great. And just to clarify, I believe that resource doc is on the Bluehost blog right now. So bluehost.com/blog. You should be able to find that resource, which has a ton of information. And for the Google CS, is that a paid service, or is that how does
Free.
someone sign up for that?
So on that resource doc it's called Made with Code, and that link takes you to Google's CS First page, and from there you can sign up for whichever level you want. And so it does a really good job of breaking everything out. I highly recommend their storytelling class, just because it really breaks down like how to build a story and really how to create the why and the how and the where and the plot if you're actually building an actual story. Whether your blog is about a physical story over time, like a fiction novel, or whether it's just about the soccer game you were at last week, it's really good for kids to really grasp those English concepts, but it does it in a non-threatening, playful manner, so that your kids don't really feel like they're sitting down and learning English, because who wants to go to English class? So.
That's great, and that's an amazing resource. That you said that is on the resource doc, so people can find that there for sure. Okay, so next question I have for you is about the kids choosing the topics. You said you've been doing this for a while. You said recently in Miami you had 100+ students. Obviously, we want the child to pick the topic that they feel best about. But can you rapid fire just shoot off some example of ideas that you've seen before?
Absolutely. Slime. There's a lot of people who do slime recipe sites. And so they test. There's a lot of science going on there because they're testing new recipes, and talking about their findings. Did it work? Did it not work? What was wrong with it? And so then another group of kids talk about Minecraft. It's all Minecraft, or Roblox. It's all Roblox. A lot of Pokemon kids. And there's also a lot of kids that just want a place to put their art or photography. So there's even a subset that I've seen of these students that put their art up for sale. So they'll
Interesting.
actually use whatever medium, canvas or sculpture or whatever, and then they'll actually post it with a WooCommerce store and post their items for sale. Always caveat with that, make sure that you as the parent are, like, watching all of that because legally income is still income. Um, but it's definitely a good opportunity for kids to kind of understand the basics of business as well, and I've seen parents really grasp onto that and turn it into, like, a business class after school. So
So it's a business class, it's an English class, math class. It sounds like science with the slime. We got a science class. This is like an all-encompassing school right here, just on whatever website they're building. That's pretty awesome.
it could
Um,
very quickly become that.
yeah, very quickly. What are some of the cooler projects that you've seen with the kids do?
Yeah, so we had one individual in Miami that's been coming for years. Probably last year was probably her third or fourth year, repeat coming back. And every year she's iterating. So she's not coming necessarily for the core content anymore. She's coming because there's a bunch of professionals that are at the event that can help her iterate on her site. And so she started with just a recipe blog about slime and turned it into a testing science blog. And then that morphed into adding WooCommerce and starting to sell her slime. And last year when she came back, she showed me her profit and loss statement where she profited $10,000 into a college savings fund.
Wow.
So just seeing, and again, her parents are highly, highly involved in all of this process, including where to put the money. But like even her mom would make sure that when they would go to the store to buy the supplies, that those came out as expenses, that she did the bookkeeping for those. And so this became an actual business class that mom was doing after school to help her gain some career skills that are very vital.
And it sounds like a career. 10 grand on her first her first business. That's incredible. Um, how old was this student? Do you remember?
10.
10. 10 grand by 10 years old. That could be the name of the book that they could write. So you've kind of touched on this lightly, and I want to take some time and kind of dive into it a little bit deeper. You keep saying heavy involvement with the parents. So if I want to use my screen as a babysitter for my kid, are you trying to tell me that maybe the website is not for me?
So it's really about making sure that everything is overseen. Um, there's a lot of evil on the internet, and the last thing that you want is to unintentionally expose your child to any kind of danger. So especially at kids camps when I'm teaching the kids directly, there's a few things that we tell the kids absolutely you never put on the internet. You never put your full name, your city, your state, anything that really identifies where you live, the name of your school, the name of your sports team. It's one thing to say you play soccer for the Eagles. It's another thing to say that you play soccer for the Orlando Eagles in Timucuan. Like, that's just too specific, really not a good thing for safety. And I always tell the parents at these events and remind them that, you know, once their kids' stuff is out there, it's out there. So there's ways to lock it down so that you can have to have a password to access it. But as far as making sure that you're monitoring everything, it's really a smart idea to make sure that you're overseeing all of that. It's not that it's not necessarily not for you. It's just that if you want it to be something that you're removed from, you just want to make sure that it's locked down and that there's a password to access it.
Okay, and I'm assuming that somewhere in that resource doc, you have a little bit more information on exactly how you can set that up, set up the password, make sure that people that you don't want going to your child's site are not going to that site. Is that accurate?
Absolutely.
Very cool. Are there any other best practices that you'd advise to the parents watching? Things, maybe keeping an eye on their children while they're working on their website, or different programs maybe that can kind of help limit their reach. I'm just trying to think of a 5 or 6 year old. Sadly, in today's day and age, you're never that many clicks away from trouble, right? Especially on the internet.
So one of the things that WordPress has baked in is the ability to not allow Google to index the site so that it can't just be found in search. That's under the settings and under the general settings, and it's one little checkbox. So I always recommend that you make sure that checkbox is checked to not allow Google to index the site, unless there's some sort of greater good or project you're working on, like that mom who was making sure that that store was running cleanly, right? Um, but otherwise, yes, first step, disallow Google to crawl the site. Um, Having a password is even better, but if Google can't crawl it, then the only people who know that the site exists are people who physically have you've given the URL to. So that's a really good solid first step. Another really good best practice is to always keep the website up to date. This is something that we even talk to our clients about. You want to make sure that all the plugins are staying up to date and that your themes are staying up to date. And that's as simple as hitting the update button inside of WordPress. That's going to keep the ability for your site to be hacked down. And always use a really solid host. Bluehost is amazing. And so that's one of the options for you to make sure that you're making sure you're not getting hacked on that side as well, because a weak host is leaving you open and vulnerable.
Yeah, I know that that is one of the features that Bluehost offers is automatic updates. So we will update your plugins, your themes, and your WordPress core files unless you tell us not to. We will automatically update those, and that I think that goes a long ways as far as patching some vulnerabilities, because usually when there's a newer version of a plugin or a theme, oftentimes it's because of new features, but oftentimes it's because someone found a vulnerability within the code, and this is a patch to shore up that vulnerability so that hackers can't get to your site. Um,
And if
well,
you're really, really concerned about it and you don't want the site actually live on the internet, there's always options like desktop server where you can run everything locally on your machine, and then the site's never live. So you don't have to worry about that. It's literally a coding sandbox for your kid to just play with PHP and JavaScript and HTML and content and really get into the nitty gritty. But again, that takes a little bit more technical knowledge. So unless you have that technical knowledge and are willing to set all that up, or if your child is maybe a little older, 12 to 12 plus, you might need to rethink that idea, but that is another option.
I think what you said there is pretty important. It depends what you want the goal to be for this, right? As we talked about, it can be a creative outlet. It can be a science project, a math project, an art project, an accounting project, a business school, essentially. It all depends on what you want the goal to be for your child and what you want them to get out of it. But I think the options are there, and I think that's what's so exciting, especially in current climate where people might not be able to go outside as much. They might not be able to see their friends as much. It's probably very possible that you could have your kids work with their friends, depending on the age, obviously, and depending on the adult supervision. You could have kids working together, maybe on like a neighborhood blog or something. Give them a project that they can work on indoors in front of the screens. I think that's great.
Absolutely.
Well, we only have a few more questions left, Sandy, and these are from people that hit us up on Instagram. We put this up and said, hey, we're going to be doing this interview. Anyone else out there have questions? Hit us with them. So these are some of the questions from our users on Instagram. Question number one here: what are some plugins that can help ensure my child's safety?
So it's not so much about ensuring their safety as it is about ensuring the interaction with the parent, because that ultimately is the safety net, right? It's mom and dad being involved. So one of the plugins that I have found useful is Oasis. And what that does is when it goes to post a new page or post, it goes through an actual approval process. So it's going to alert mom and dad that, hey, this post is written, can you publish it? And so mom and dad are publishing while the kid is authoring. And so that gives you a little bit more control over what's going on. And it triggers the ability for mom and dad to review it before it goes out onto the internet, not, oh, I got the newsletter from my child and they accidentally already blasted the whole world with their personal information that we've told them 6 times not to put on the internet. Because let's be real, kids are kids and they're going to forget, and you're going to have to remind them 100 times. And so that's why at a kids camp, we start out with safety, we do it again in the middle, and we do it again at the end, because I really drive home that factor. The other one that I really like is Stream. That plugin just logs everything. It logs every change, every update, every both code and content change, who's logged in. And so it's very quick and easy to see if there's something nefarious going on that
Hmm.
might need to be adjusted, especially like hacks and things like that. So you're able to very quickly see if there's something out of line. And so it's just a list of every little change and every little login to make sure that everything's in good shape.
Yeah, and I think that's a big one, having that visibility as a parent to go over everything and make sure that they have the final say on what the kid is sending out. I think that's really big. You've done this quite a few times, we'll say, in quite a few different locations. Do you have any recommendations on how long you would suggest the kids last? I know every kid is different, obviously, with their attention span. Some adults that I know still have a short attention span, but is there any number? Obviously, there's not a set number for every child, but do you have any suggestion on how long?
So at an actual kids camp, we do about an hour-ish sprints, and then we have an activity to break it up. So we'll do the art activity, and then we'll go on a scavenger hunt for an hour, and then it'll be lunchtime, which is great. And then they'll come back and we'll start to build the site, and then we'll have a snack break, and then we'll finish the site, and then we'll show it all off to everybody. And having those transition periods definitely increases their attention span for the day. But if you're doing this at home, there's no reason that it can't be done over months. So you can do that blog storyboarding over the period of a week. And so you're coming back to it for a 15 to 20-minute stint every single day during the school week. And then the next week, you're starting to build the blog. And then the next week, it's you need to write twice a week. And then you're starting to build your content. And then you go back and go, oh, well, let's go get some pictures. We can still go hiking. Let's go hike and get some cool pictures and add that in. And so you can easily take what we do in a day and stretch it out in 15 to 20-minute blocks over the time that you're at home, or even just as after school projects once life goes back to normal. And so that gives you an opportunity. One of the things I've always done is that my child, and I know it's a little different because we homeschool, but all of his papers that he writes for school, because they're already typed, he copies them out of Google Docs and pastes them into his WordPress blog. And so then that gives him the opportunity to illustrate them because he loves to draw. And so he's got one of those electronic drawing Wacom tablets. And so he's able to illustrate them and create a featured image for it that has to do with his actual assignment that he didn't really want to do, but now he gets to illustrate it. So it's kind of cool. So just another small idea on building your content over time.
Yeah. So it seems like a constant theme that we keep hitting is that building the website is whatever you want to make it as the adult and as the supervision of the child. So
Absolutely.
I know that things are a little bit unorthodox right now, but in the future, how do I find a word camp and a kids camp in my area?
So central.wordcamp.org, again, that's central.wordcamp.org, is an amazing resource. It lists all the events going on. Um, some of them are moving to digital for the time being, but the physical events will come back. And so there you can find all of the events. You can see which ones are in your area. If they don't have a kids program, ask, because it may be something that they want to do but don't think they'll have any interest in. So there's nothing wrong with filling out the contact form on the website and saying, hey, are you thinking about doing a kids program? I'd certainly be interested in attending.
I think that's great. And the final question, and again, thank you so much for your time today, Sandy. Where can people that are watching find you if they have further questions?
I'll be in the cave in the back. No, I'm just kidding. Um, I am on Twitter. I'm at Sunsand Design. I'm also same handle on Instagram, and my website is sandyedwards.me.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I learned a lot, and I hope our viewers did too.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. It's been awesome.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks so much. Bye.